So, welcome back to our next mindfulness session, in which we are exploring difficulties and working with difficult experiences. So, we've just kicked off by listening to and taking part in a meditation that's from Finding Peace in a Frantic World, and it's entitled Exploring Difficulty. So if you would like to do the meditation first, then you'll find it on SoundCloud under the Finding Peace in a Frantic World section, Exploring Difficulty, meditation number 6 on their program. So let me just give a quick recap on what's in that meditation. So in that, we are invited to instead of breathing out things that are playing on our mind, we're invited to stay with them for a little bit and to identify things that are on our mind at the moment, any difficulties, and to stay with those, and to identify the parts of the body where you feel those emotions or sensations, those difficulties. And to stay with it and to breathe with it, and to tell yourself it's okay to explore the difficulties, to stay with it for a bit and to breathe with it. And it's okay not to like it, but it's just allowing it to be. And then the idea is that if you stay with the difficulty, eventually it starts to reduce, the effect of it starts to reduce, and you start to kind of come to terms or deal with that difficulty. I think that's a reasonable summary.
Yeah.
Does that sound right, Anne and Leslie?
Yeah. Yes, it does. It does.
Okay.
I think that meditation gives you a valuable message, because it's saying you don't need to feel guilty for not liking something. You're entitled not to like things sometimes. You don't have to be saintly and say, oh, everything's okay, everything's fine. No, you can sometimes say, no, this is awful. And then go on from there.
Yeah.
I think it's a really valuable message in that meditation.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, I think that's a great point.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So we were invited to either bring to mind a difficulty that we're grappling with now, or a difficult sensation that we're grappling with now, or in the meditation, if by some miracle you're not grappling with anything difficult at the moment, then to bring to mind something from the past that you found difficult to deal with, and exploring that really and being with that. So is anybody happy to share what they were bringing to mind in that meditation?
Well, I have to be honest. There were so many things. I've done this before, but there are so many things that burgeon their way up. And then I end up, and this happened this morning, just the same. Because shall I think, let me think, no, this is more important. No, hang on a minute, I did that. And I got myself in, and I suddenly realized that and this has happened when I've done it before, I'd got so many things, and I thought, well, this is ridiculous, because I've got to separate out what is most urgent at the moment. What am I going to tackle? And I'll tell you this because it was an acute embarrassment. And when something happens and you really wish you'd thought a little bit more before you did something, and you realize what you've done, and all the strength goes out of your body because you are that upset about it. And that's exactly what happened to me. We have 2 very elderly gentlemen that live in our cul-de-sac. And we also have a WhatsApp group for the cul-de-sac. And unfortunately, the person who put the information on the WhatsApp group was not very clear. So the name was given of this gentleman, both got the same Christian name, that he'd passed away. And of course, I thought, oh, that's absolutely awful. You know, that was really sad news. And I immediately made a decision that it was the gentleman who was really struggling. He was being looked after by his daughter. His daughter lived with him and he was struggling. The other one with the same name had been talking to me just a few days previously. He'd been going on his regular, you know what I'm going to say, don't you? He had been going on his regular walk, his perambulation around the cul-de-sac on his walker, and we'd been chatting at the front, out of the front of the house. So I presumed that the man was, so I sent condolence card to the wrong man and family. And I had a note put through the door, complete with the condolence card from his daughter, to say it's not my dad who has gone. It's the other one with the same name. And I was devastated. I really was. This happened just a few weeks ago. I was absolutely devastated. And I got really upset. I didn't know how to deal with it. I tried sitting down and taking it just as we've just done, but it was just too fuzzy. I couldn't control it at that moment in time. And so I have sat down a number of times and I thought, well, I really ought to go and speak. And then I thought, well, I don't want to upset the man and how am I going to approach his daughter without knocking on the door? So what I decided to do was I wrote this long letter, and I thought, well, hopefully I may see her in the street. I don't want to knock on the door because he will say, what's going on? And I mean, she may be good at making up stories, but I wasn't sure about that. But I wrote this very long letter and I put it through the door. And I was driving up the cul-de-sac, somebody right on my tail, and I saw her coming out of the house, and it would have been an ideal time to stop outside the house, but I had it's usually the way, I've got someone right behind me, but she waved and smiled. And the relief, I thought, it's still not right, I've still got to talk to her about this, but I felt so awful about it. And that still, going through that process that we've just done, each time you do it, you feel a little bit better. It's a human error. We often make suppositions, and I do wish I'd perhaps gone to someone else to double check which one. I'd made a decision that the one I'd been speaking to just a few days was still as right as mine was. So I live with that at the moment every day. And when I want to sort of get rid of it, or not get rid of it because it keeps coming back again, but to lessen the load, that is a very, very effective meditation. Because when he says think about the part of your body that is in it all over, I can't itemize one small area. So I have to go around the whole place trying to sort it all out. But it's a brilliant meditation. And as Leslie said, it is very effective. But I have to keep doing it because I haven't got over this horror, because I just thought that must have been the most awful thing to come through the door, and it was my fault. And it's things like that when it's lovely to have a route out. Yes, it's nice to share it with somebody and say, oh, you'll never guess what I've done. But it's not the same as dealing with it internally, sorting it out for yourself. So I'm afraid that was my horrific, really, thing that I'm still dealing with on a regular basis. And I might look all cheery as though all the world's wonderful, but this keeps coming back and it creeps in. So I often sit down and have a little think about it all. But I can't rid myself of the thought at the moment of what I did. So there you go.
It must be a huge help that the daughter did wave to you and seemed okay.
Yeah, she could have cut me dead. Yeah.
Yeah, you must have understood why you thought it would be him and accepted it.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
I do hope so. I haven't spoken to her yet, but I will do.
Yeah.
I will speak to her. But
she wouldn't have waved, would she, if she hadn't felt that? She would have, stepped back from you, but she obviously didn't.
And I would have had the situation been easier had I not had a van right at the rear of the car.
Yeah.
I could have pulled over. But I thought, I can't do that. I can't pull across because you can't get two cars side by side in our cul-de-sac. They didn't make them wide enough in those days.
Yeah.
So, I'd got to keep going. But she waved and she smiled, and that was...
Yeah.
But anyway, I've still got to tussle with it because I try and put myself in her situation of what was happening. So I'm very sorry, but that's what's happened today. And the meditation has been very helpful, but it was very intense, very intense.
Right. Leslie, do you want to share anything at this point?
Well, all I can share at the moment, I've got no real issues. I've got a physical problem at the minute, which I'm going through, but I feel okay about that. It is a problem, but it will get resolved. I've just got to go along with it. So, yeah, I felt all meditations help that sort of thing. Just taking you along that path to, get where you want to be. So, yeah.
I think embarrassment is a very potent, needling kind of thing. It can be, can't it? Particularly.
Somebody. It's when you think you've hurt somebody.
Exactly.
Yes.
And possibly you haven't. You may not. And just thought, oh dear, what a silly mistake.
Yes, because some people might just think, well, that's a thing to think, isn't it? But understandable, I had a similar thing when somebody told me that my friend's dad was dead. And I was a bit dubious because he wasn't I didn't think he was a particularly reliable source. So I had to very gingerly say to my friend, I heard something really awful the other day and I hope it's not true. But yeah, very, very, very delicate sort of thing. But often I think we project, don't we, onto people how terrible they must feel as a result of that. And often that's as much about our projection and our ideas of the situation, and not so much, like you say, when you find out what they're actually thinking, it probably isn't as bad as we think. And if we have very high expectations about ourselves, and our behaviour and our level of behaviour and care and compassion and, subtlety and so on, then we can judge ourselves quite harshly for things that are just human and very easy things to do.
And forgive yourself.
Be kind and compassionate. What would you say to the younger Anne if the younger Anne, the child Anne, had made a similar sort of,
Yes, I'd have to think about that. I definitely want some sort of communication to go ahead.
Yes.
And I feel I did that when I sent the letter, because there were lots of questions in the letter which invited her to respond. Well, she didn't respond, which made me feel worse. But then the smile and the wave that made me feel a little bit better. But the fact that I'd done it in the first place, I got very cross with myself.
Yes, because you do have very, high standards of behaviour normally. And we do need to give ourselves a bit of slack, you know, maybe think about, well, what would I say to my daughter if they'd done that?
Yeah.
So yeah, but embarrassment, yeah, I you know, and I still have some things from the past where I think about them and think,
and you do, yes, you do. You do feel that.
But compassion for ourselves, you know, that it's an ongoing process, isn't it? And this meditation of working with difficult experiences is kind of an opening into compassion for ourselves, isn't it, really? And letting things be, but, you know, letting them go and sort of working with them. So I thought, well, I like you, Anne, was thinking, well, which is my biggest difficulty at the moment? You know, what am I stressing about the most? But I thought, no, actually, I'm feeling just a generally sort of a little bit stressed at the moment because there's a lot going on. And, you know, a lot of things that are out of my control. My daughter's wedding. My other daughter's just finished with her boyfriend, and she's a bit sad and out of sorts, and nobody will ever love her again. And there's a lot of stuff going on in life like that, which can make me generally feel a little bit anxious. And I tend to feel it then in my chest, so I get a bit of tightening. You know, my heart's going a little bit faster than it should be. A bit of tightness in my chest. You know. Bit harder to breathe. So and I find this meditation for that is perfect, because when you spend some time breathing into those sensations, obviously it physically helps to release those difficulties and to trigger your relaxation response. So that's perfect for that, with a generalized anxiety sort of thing. I think. Yes, fabulous. And pain, of course, is another area of difficulty. There may be ongoing pain. And in Mindfulness for Health, of which we've done some meditations from, they've got a similar meditation to this, but it focuses a lot more on specifically on pain for people who are dealing long-term with pain. And, you know, breathing into that and leaning into it a little bit and trying to be a little more accepting and not kind of fighting our pain, but, you know, soothing into it. So it's all quite tricky stuff to get hold of at first. I think all of these concepts can be they're not what we've been brought up to do, are they? But all can be very helpful, as you say. So let's start having a look at some of the underlying concepts. So here's one I prepared earlier. There we go. Can you see that okay?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So some concepts then about dealing with difficulties. First one is about experiencing your experience, which sounds a bit of a bizarre heading. So it starts off by saying that some thoughts are more difficult to let go of, and those can include the sort of thoughts that have got emotional charge, like if you've had a row with somebody, or if you've said something which you perceive to be incredibly embarrassing, or and when you meditate then, while you're trying to grapple with that thought, your thoughts will tend to drift back and back and back again to that charged thought. I mean, in this meditation, we were asked to bring to mind something we are grappling with. And in your case, Anne, you were thinking about a charged thought. So that's quite a powerful illustration of a charged thought. So chances are, if you're meditating and you weren't asked to think about that charged thought, it probably would have still popped into your mind a little bit. Would you say that was?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, fair comment. Because when you've done something like this, yes, you go about your daily life and the thing just keeps popping into your mind, doesn't it? A charged thought. As you go through it in your mind and what you should have done and what you should have said and et cetera, et cetera. So the mindfulness practice, when we're dealing with difficulties like charged thoughts or persistent difficulties like pain, is to be able to go underneath the thoughts and feelings and allow ourselves to feel them fully. So going underneath them, again, I found this quite a difficult concept when I first started doing mindfulness. Well, what is that, going underneath them? I think I would probably say to fully embrace them as well, to try and explain it to myself. And the feelings can then become the meditation as you breathe in and out with those emotions, those sensations. So does that make sense so far?
Yes.
That kind of, yeah. So some charged thoughts aren't unpleasant. So, you know, you might be going on holiday, and we've talked about this one. We talked about your trip to your up and coming trip to Germany, Anne, didn't we? And it wasn't an unpleasant thought of going to Germany. It was going to be a pleasant thing, but you'd got lots and lots of sort of anxieties about, oh, this might go wrong, and what if that doesn't turn up, and so it suggests that you can deal with, you know, nice charged thoughts as well. Sort of, you know, something nice is happening, but it is creating you a little bit of overwhelm or anxiety. So you can, you know, this meditation, this practice can still apply to that, to step out of whatever it is, and to be with it and to soften into it a little bit, and then to help to let that go. So, original discussion points, what charged thoughts have we had recently? So, you know, perfect example, we've kind of already been looking at that. And how did you work with it? How might or did the technique help with the charged thoughts? So I think we've kind of already answered those original questions, in a sense, about your experience, Anne. I don't know if you've got anything else to add to that, Leslie.
No, I think that all makes sense. That's, yeah. Just stay with it. Yeah, it is.
Stay with it. Yes. Okay. So moving on, because staying with it sounds a little bit counterintuitive in a way.
Yeah, but it's not fighting against it if we can manage to stay with it. Because if you fight against something, it makes it worse. It strengthens it. Yeah.
Yes, it does. And that kind of comes on very nicely to the next point. So getting from A to B, the heading, this is from the Little Mindfulness Workbook, these notes, or sort of summaries thereof, and other sources. So the idea is that when we do mindfulness practice, we're normally trying to achieve something. We want to get from where we are, like A, for example, feeling anxious or embarrassed, to where we want to be. For example, feeling calm or feeling at ease with what we've done. And because we don't like being anxious and we don't like being embarrassed, we want to be able to switch straight. Like we'd love to just switch that off like a switch, and to go straight to feeling calm, or to feeling forgiveness for ourselves, or we're okay with what's happened. However, the theory of mindfulness is that we need to fully experience whatever's happening in A to be able to get to B. So that again, it sounds counterintuitive at first glance. We need to be with whatever it is, whatever difficulty it is, to be able to get to the point that we want to get to it, where we're feeling, where we've sorted things, or we're feeling better about things, or we're accepting of things.
I suppose really, an analogy, I was trying to think of that, an analogy with something going wrong and not dealing with it, or having something that is making you anxious. It's a bit like Well, I often, when I'm working, I have piles of stuff all over the place, and it looks to the uneducated eye a mess. So I'm looking at this mess, and nothing is sorted at all. And just talking through it, and well, if I put all those papers there, and if I've got those books over there, and we'll bring these together, and that goes with that. And then once it's sorted, and it may still all be there, but it's in ordered piles, it already feels better. So the meditation is almost like it is like doing that activity, because you're going back to the mess, if you like, that's your mind, because that's jangling with all these things. And then you're trying to put them into little, so just going back and doing that and thinking, oh, well, it looks better now, or I feel better now after I've done that. And yes, it might get a little bit untidy again, but not quite as bad as it was at the first. And it's a little bit like, that's what I think, because you're going into something that you don't want to really think about too much, but you've got to, because otherwise you're never going to deal with it. And that's how I see meditation, really, that it's making you look at what you probably don't want to, but it's a very good idea, because it breaks it down and it orders part of those thoughts.
Yeah, I think that's a really good example. Yes, almost like, because we'd love to get from being untidy and messy and disarray. We'd love to just click out. Well, if you're anything like me, you'd love to click your fingers and have it all sorted. But no, you've got to go from A to B, haven't you? You've got to be with A for a bit, sorting. And in meditation, we can be doing a bit of sorting, not necessarily with the doing mind, sorting out, well, what, thinking, but just being with is a kind of a way of sorting while you process and make your peace with whatever it is that's going on or has happened.
Yeah, and I find with meditation in that way, it also helps you to sort of think, right, I'm going to deal with this now, the rest can wait. Just dealing with one thing and giving all attention to that one thing, and it takes far less time than if you're trying to do that while thinking of something else. And I find meditation helps you to focus in that way, to deal with things that perhaps you don't want to, but you've got to deal with them. And I find a lot.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. So, like you were saying before, Leslie, so what we resist tends to persist.
Yes.
Yeah, because we try and avoid negative stuff, don't we, as human beings? We don't want to be with it. We don't want to be with pain. We don't want to be with embarrassment. We don't want to be with anxiety. We don't want to be with anger. We just like to...
And that's natural. Yeah.
Yes, it's natural. And we try to resist it by avoiding it. Try not to think about it, because it just keeps popping back into the mind, doesn't it? Sweeping it under the carpet. But our efforts not to have an experience keeps us tied to it. So as long as we keep on shoving things under the carpet will just keep on wafting up and letting those things back out again. As we keep tied to it. Whereas if we, sweep stuff out and sort it, then we can let it go then, can't we? Put it away. Or have some sort of a peace with it or an acceptance. So being mindful, we can change our awareness of a situation and our reaction to it. So it's all about, to me, that says it's all about the stepping back again. And this is something we say over and over again in mindfulness, isn't it? It's about the stepping back. And instead of just being in our mind, dealing with things, whirring away, stepping back and allowing things to process in a meditative sort of way. And the good thing about that is that at the same time, we create a little place of calmness in which naturally we're going to reduce our anxiety levels, which is going to help us anyway to be able to deal with whatever it is that's going on. Because our anxiety creates us the secondary suffering, doesn't it? Or our embarrassment.
Yes.
Or maybe our resistance to pain, going a bit deeper and thinking about pain. That's something that we may not be able to do much about, or we might be doing all that we can about it. But instead of adding secondary suffering to that by resisting it and fighting it and being all tense and why is this happening to me, and if only I could, blah blah blah, softening into it, being a little bit more accepting, can also help the pain to reduce, because when we get uptight and about pain, then that just makes pain worse, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, yes.
Definitely. Mm-hmm.
So we've already done the discussion points first. What are we trying to achieve? How's the journey going? I think, yeah, journey is going. I think we're on that journey, aren't we? From what we're saying, yeah. So, and yeah, to reiterate, then some things in life can't be changed. So the weather, train strikes, long-term health conditions, mistakes. Humans make mistakes, and that's what we do, and we can find them really embarrassing. But we can choose not to add to our suffering, which is the primary experience, by resisting and struggling against that, and creating layers of additional secondary suffering by fretting, by thinking, oh, they must really hate me, they must be devastated, they must be this, that, the other. So mindfulness can help us to accept things that we can't change. Can't change what we've said or done in the past, can we? We can apologise, and we can make our peace, and we can explain, and then we can let it go, hopefully, and therefore reduce our suffering. There you go. So things we're resisting and struggling against that can't be changed, and how would we like to work on accepting? So we've kind of talked this one through, but I don't know if you've got anything to add as a closing gambit on this topic.
I think as you sort of as you get to my age, I won't include the two of you in this arena of age. So don't worry. There is so much that's gone on in the past that you could make a little list of all the things that you cannot change. That you may have said something or perhaps not done something that you felt you should have done. And you can't change it now because that time's gone, those people have gone. And I do sometimes have to sit down and I revisit these things, but the meditation has helped an awful lot to come to terms with, because they're often only tiny, that it's not anything that was of great import at the time, but you just think, we should have asked that. We should have done this. And it's usually with regard to people who are no longer with us, unfortunately. And it's little things like that they do come back, they pop up, and you think, oh dear, here we go. But I tend to sit and think about, as today, you think about where you're most upset about that, and just breathe into it, and it does help. It does help a lot. And then I wait for the next one to pop up, So obviously I haven't got rid of everything, have I yet?
Well, I think you wouldn't be human, would you, if you had?
I agree there, but I have to say, since I've been practicing mindfulness meditation, I don't bring back so many of the things that have gone on in the past. Whether it's the meditation helps process them and put them where they need to be.
Yeah.
But they don't seem to pop up so much these days as they used to. So I can only put that down to the mindfulness and the meditation, which has helped me get perhaps beyond that point a little bit.
Yeah, and putting things, it helps to put things in perspective, because you're sitting there and you're just dealing with those issues, and there's no distraction. You're focused quite internally on what's going on. And I think I have to agree, it is very, very helpful, especially with the things that you can't change. You know, you can't change them. There's nothing that you can do that will make matters end. So you do have to just deal with them, but deal with them gently for yourself.
And bringing them with you, bringing past experiences into the present is not letting you be in the present now, because you're in the, instead of being where you now, you're back in the past again. And it's no point, in a way. You know, but it's hard to let go of, very hard. But it's now to keep bringing the past back to you, it's not really much help. Well,
no, it certainly isn't. No, it isn't at all.
No.
I read quite a useful thing recently in a book by the Mindfulness Association. I mean, we've talked about sort of metaphors and analogies for the thoughts, haven't we, in the sessions that we've been doing? Like, you know, maybe it's useful to think of thoughts as clouds that will pass, or bubbles that we can blow away or can burst and dispel, or trains, runaway trains, or, you know, we've used quite a few of those. And then in the Mindfulness Association book, they came up with an analogy which I quite liked, which was that the mind is a bit like an undercurrent. So, you know, a water analogy, where the undercurrent is just churning. So if you live by a river that had got an undercurrent, you know, and that's doing something all the time, isn't it? It's busy, busy. And the undercurrent is all about what's happened in the past, or it's about your, you know, worries or anxieties for the future, or plotting and planning. So and it just keeps on churning and swirling about and doing and that we can, again, you know, like with the clouds, like with the train, we can have a choice to either be down in that undercurrent, you know, being buffeted about by it, washed and swirled about, and, or, you know, going with all those old thoughts as they pop up, or the future worries as they pop up, or with the practice of mindfulness, we can learn to sit out on the bank sometimes and just to have a look at that undercurrent and think, am I going to choose to go with it or not? And I thought that I found that such a powerful analogy. And I think, you know, mindfulness training, for me, one of the really powerful things is about having choice. And, you know, it doesn't come straight away, does it, with anything? It's, you know, our mindfulness muscle takes a while to build up. But with that building up of the mindfulness muscle does come eventually and slowly and bit by bit the ability to think, oh, there it goes again, the undercurrent, or the train's rattling past again with that thought. Am I going to get on board? Am I going to go in the undercurrent? Or am I going to say, I'm going to step back, I'm going to wait at the bus stop because I don't want to get on that bus? Or am I going to sit on the bank and just let it carry on doing its thing? The extension to that analogy of the undercurrent was that the undercurrent is doing its own thing, and it'll do it whether you take part in it or not. And that if things need processing, they kind of get processed by themselves without you having to really be in there and worrying and worrying and worrying. You know, the subconscious mind tends to process things that we need to process, and we can step out of that and not be so embroiled through mindfulness. So
I like that analogy. I like sitting on the riverbank.
Yes.
Preferably in the sunshine.
Yes. And, you know, sometimes the river will be really ferocious, won't it? And the undercurrent will be massive, and there'll be eddies, and you'll see sort of planks going whizzing by because they're getting dragged along in the undercurrent. But sometimes the undercurrent's a bit quieter and stuff. So I like that. It's an alive thing, isn't it? Because that's what our mind's like, isn't it? Sometimes it's a lot more frantic than others, but we always have that option, if we can remember, to get out and have a sit down on the bank. So, okay, we'll leave the session there for today. Thank you if you've joined us for our session, and we look forward to seeing you again. Next session is about noticing the good things, which is one of my favourites. Because what's not to like about that? So, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you again, hopefully.